cleaning woman put her sweater over a CEO who was sleeping. She thought he looked too tired to be alone. What she didn't know was that he was a vampire king who had been awake for 300 years. And she had just said the exact words his dead wife once said. Darius Vale hadn't closed his eyes in the 100 years. He didn't need to. But here he was, resting in his large leather chair on the 45th floor of Vale Corp's main office, pretending to be the most tired CEO in Manhattan. His breathing was careful, slow, deep, like a person's. His left hand hung loosely over the chair's arm. His head tipped just enough to show a man who had finally given in to tiredness after a very hard 16-hour business meeting. It was all a show. Through his barely open eyes, Darius watched the shiny glass door of his corner office. Outside, the city sparkled like stars that had fallen, but he was sharply focused on one thing. Whoever walked through that door next would show their real self. Thieves always do, he thought to himself. For 2 weeks, small things had been missing from the boss's floor. A fancy pen, a glass paperweight. Last Friday, an expensive Rolex watch from the VP of Finance's desk drawer. His HR boss, Marcus, thought it was one of the night cleaning team, but he had no proof. Security cameras showed nothing. The person knew where the cameras were. Darius could have simply stopped everyone working there and made them tell the truth from their minds. But he had promised centuries ago, no mind control unless needed. People deserve to choose freely, even when they misuse it. Still, he was curious. After living through the Renaissance, the Industrial Age, 2 world wars, and the start of the internet, people still let him down in ways he could guess. Greed, lying, fighting. Maybe tonight will be different, a quiet voice whispered in the back of his mind. The same voice that had stopped him from destroying everything decades ago. He ignored it. At 11:47 p.m., he heard the soft click of a keycard at the door. Darius's pulse, which he kept beating just to seem normal, not because he needed it, stayed steady. His super hearing picked up everything. The soft sound of rubber-soled shoes on marble, the rattling of a cleaning cart, the quiet gasp of breath from someone who had just noticed him. Oh, the voice was a woman's, surprised, gentle. He didn't move. Footsteps came closer slowly, carefully, then stopped about 6 feet away. "Sir?" The woman's voice was barely a whisper. "Mr. Vale?" Darius kept up his act. The light smell of lemon cleaner and something else, lavender soap maybe, floated toward him. Not perfume. This woman couldn't buy perfume. A pause. Then the footsteps moved back. "Here it comes," Darius thought. "She'll go for the expensive cufflinks on my desk or the fancy pen in the pen holder." They always take something small first. But instead, he heard the soft swish of a duster moving across his bookshelf, the gentle sound of papers being straightened. She was cleaning. Darius tried not to open his eyes all the way. For the next 10 minutes, the woman moved through his office like a ghost. She emptied his trash can, wiped down the windows, even fixed a tilted painting on the wall. A real painting he bought in 1891, right from the artist's studio. Not once did she go near his desk where $3,000 in cash was clearly visible in an open drawer. He had left it there on purpose. Then something he didn't expect happened. The footsteps came closer. Darius felt Apperson next to his chair, and his hunting feeling grew stronger. Every muscle in his body tensed, ready to attack if she reached for his wallet. But she didn't. Instead, something warm and soft was put over his shoulders. A sweater, old, used, smelling of laundry soap and that same lavender soap. Darius's eyes almost flew open in surprise. In 300 years, no one deserves to be this tired. The words were barely a whisper, spoken so quietly they might have been just for herself, but they hit Darius like a knife through the heart. His wife had said those exact words. Margaret, his Margaret, with her ink-stained fingers and bright laugh, who used to find him in his study at sunrise after he had worked all night on things for the kingdom. She would put her wrap over his shoulders and whisper those words before kissing his forehead. That was in 1825. She had been dead for 200 years. The woman was walking away now, her cart squeaking softly toward the door. Darius sat frozen, his carefully controlled calm broken. His hand grabbed the chair arm so hard the leather cracked under his fingers. He made himself stay still until he heard the door close, the lock click, the footsteps fade down the hallway. Only then did Darius open his eyes. The sweater on his shoulders was light brown, worn out at the elbows with a small coffee stain near the bottom. It was the kind of sweater someone wore because they couldn't afford to throw it away, not because they liked it. She had given him the sweater right off her own back. Darius stood up quickly, the sweater falling to the floor. He moved to the window, his reflection barely visible in the glass, pale skin, dark hair, eyes that turned bright red when his control slipped. No one deserves to be this tired. Those words, that exact sentence, a coincidence? He had stopped believing in coincidences around the same time he had stopped believing in God. Darius pulled out his phone and called Marcus. The HR boss answered right away, his voice sleepy. "Sir, it's almost midnight. The cleaning woman who just left my office. I need her file on my desk in 10 minutes. Everything. Full background check. Job history, family records, everything." Which one? We have 6 on the night shift. Brown hair, late 20s, moves quietly. She was wearing a light brown sweater. He stopped. Actually, she's not wearing it anymore. I'll find out who that is. Darius hung up and turned back to the sweater on the floor. Slowly he bent down and picked it up, running his fingers over the worn fabric. For the first time in centuries, the vampire king felt something he had forgotten existed. Hope. And it scared him more than any wooden stake ever could. Darius had watched the security video 47 times. It was now 23 p.m. the next evening, and he sat in his dark office, the bright light of his computer screen making shadows across his face. On the screen, the grainy video showed him asleep in his chair, and then, at timestamp 23 hours, 51 minutes, and 33 seconds, she entered. Clara Thompson, that was her name. He pressed pause, zooming in on her face. Mid-20s, tired eyes, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore the same cleaning uniform all the night staff wore, but hers was lighter from being washed too many times. Everything about her seemed ordinary, except she wasn't. Darius pressed play and watched for the 48th time as Clara cleaned his office, then put her sweater over his shoulders. He had made the sound better, listening only to her voice, taking away every other sound until only her whisper remained. No one deserves to be this tired. He had run the sound through a voice analysis program. No match in any record book. He had checked old history files, old recordings, anything linked to Margaret's family line. Nothing. Yet the words were exact, not almost the same, not close. Except the file Marcus had given him sat open on his desk. Clara Marie Thompson, age 27, widow. Her husband died 3 years ago in a building accident. One son, Ethan, age 5, 2 jobs, night janitor at Vale Corp, weekend waitress at a restaurant in Queens. No criminal record, no debt beyond normal bills, no social media presence except for a basic Facebook account. She rarely updated it. She was invisible, easy to forget, perfect easy prey for the city. So why had she given him her sweater? A knock at the door stopped his thoughts. Marcus entered, looking nervous. He always looked nervous around Darius, which was smart. "Sir, you asked me to set up another background check." I went deeper, talked to her references, previous bosses, neighbors, and everyone says the same thing. She's kind, keeps to herself, works hard. One neighbor said Clara once paid for her food when her card didn't work. She didn't even know the woman. Darius leaned back in his chair. Financial status? Barely making rent, behind on utility bills. Her son's school sent 3 notices about unpaid lunch fees. Marcus held back. "Sir, if this is about the thefts, I really don't think—" "It's not about the thefts." Marcus blinked. "Then what?" "That will be all." After Marcus left, Darius pulled up a different file, one his assistant didn't know existed. He had secretly accessed the building's climate control systems, getting body data the sensors collected for keeping the building comfortable. Heart rate, body temperature, breathing patterns. Last night, when Clara had entered his office and found him sleeping, her heart rate had been 72 beats per minute. Normal. When she had approached him, a strange man alone in a locked office at midnight, it had gone up to 76. Only 76. When she put the sweater over him and whispered those words, her heart rate had actually dropped to 68. She had been calmer near him than when she was alone. That wasn't normal. Humans had natural feelings. Prey animals always sense hunters. Even when Darius completely hid his power, people felt something. A cold spot, a feeling of worry, a warning to run away. But Clara Thompson had covered him with her sweater, like he was someone worth protecting. "What are you?" he wondered, staring at her still picture on the screen. His phone vibrated. A text from building security. Night shift started. Cleaning crew clocked in. Darius stood, his choice made. If Clara Thompson had some link to his past, magical or otherwise, he would discover it. But he couldn't do it as Darius Vale, CEO. She would be too careful, too guarded. He needed her to see him as harmless. 20 minutes later, Darius rode the staff elevator down to the basement storage area, wearing clothes he had borrowed from the maintenance supervisor's closet. Dark blue work clothes, dirty work boots, a cap pulled low. He had changed his look a little, made his skin look warmer, his eyes brown instead of their natural pale gray, added a little bit of a beard. 300 years of survival had taught him how to become anyone. The basement was dark, lit by flickering long lights that buzzed like dying insects. Rows of storage shelves went far into the shadow, filled with office supplies, old furniture, old files. He heard her before he saw her. The squeak of cartwheels, the soft humming of a song he didn't know. Darius grabbed a clipboard from a hook on the wall and pretended to check things as Clara came around the corner, pulling her cleaning cart. She saw him and smiled. Actually smiled like finding a stranger in a creepy basement at midnight was totally normal. "Oh, hi, are you new?" Her voice was lighter than he expected, younger. There was a warmth to it that made something in his chest feel tight. A feeling he hadn't had since Margaret used to greet him after his long trips away from home. "Yeah," Darius said, making his voice a little deeper. "First week, Derek." He had seen the name on the work clothes. "I'm Clara." "Welcome to the exciting world of late-night building care," she laughed. And it was real, natural. "Just a warning. The heating system down here sounds like it's haunted around 2 a.m. I'll keep that in mind." She moved past him toward the supply shelves, and Darius caught that smell again. Lavender soap and something underneath it. Something that made his natural instincts quiet down. Not silent, just still, like he knew it. Clara reached for a box of trash bags on the top shelf, standing on her toes. Without thinking, Darius stepped forward. "Let me." His hand closed over hers on the box. The moment their skin touched, Darius felt it. A jolt of something that shot up his arm like electricity. Clara gasped softly and looked into his eyes. For one unbelievable second, her brown eyes flashed gold. Then she blinked, and they were normal again. "Thanks," she whispered, taking the box. "These shelves aren't made for short people." But Darius barely heard her. His mind was racing. Gold eyes. Margaret had gold eyes in the sunlight. Clara was already walking away, humming again, completely unaware that she had just confirmed what he suspected. She wasn't just connected to his past. She was his past and she had no idea. "So how's your son handling the move?" Darius regretted the question the moment it left his mouth. Too specific. He wasn't supposed to know she had a son. Not as Derek, the new maintenance guy. But Clara didn't seem to notice. She was struggling with a box of old files, trying to move it from one shelf to another. "I haven't told him yet. Don't want to get his hopes up until I have first and last month's rent saved. Must be tough raising a kid alone." Darius put himself on the other side of the box, holding the edges. "On 3. "Sure." They lifted together. The box was heavy enough that Clara grunted with effort, but Darius had to remember to pretend it weighed something. He had carried large pianos with one hand. "Tough doesn't even begin to cover it," Clara said once they had put the box on the lower shelf. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "But Ethan's worth it. He's 5 and he still believes the world is good. I want to keep it that way as long as possible." "By moving our building." Clara stopped, her smile disappearing. "There was a shooting last week 2 blocks away. Ethan heard the sirens and asked if the police were coming to help someone. Not if someone got hurt, if they were coming to help." She shook her head. "That's the difference, you know. He still thinks help comes when you need it." Darius felt something pull tight in his chest. "And you want him to keep thinking that?" "For as long as I can afford to. Yeah." Clara grabbed her spray bottle and started wiping down the shelves. "There's a neighborhood in Queens near the park. Good school district. Rent's higher, but the landlord doesn't ignore broken locks. Kids play outside after dark. That's what I'm saving for. 2 jobs worth of saving." Clara looked at him, and for a moment Darius thought he had asked too much, but she just nodded. 2 jobs, extra shifts, skipped meals. "Whatever it takes." She paused, then added quietly, "My husband always said Ethan deserved to grow up safe. I'm just trying to keep that promise." Your husband. Darius had read about Daniel Thompson in the file. A construction worker killed when scaffolding fell, age 29, left behind a wife and a 2-year-old son. The life insurance barely paid for the funeral. I'm sorry, Darius said, and he meant it. Don't be. I mean, thank you, but I'm tired of sorry. Clara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Everyone's been sorry for 3 years. I need different things now, like working plumbing in neighborhoods where gunshots aren't the local alarm clock. She moved to the next row of shelves, and Darius followed, pulled by something he couldn't name. The basement was cold, concrete, and metal and gloomy, flickering light. But wherever Clara went felt warmer, not really. His vampire senses didn't work that way, but there was a presence around her, like standing near a fireplace in winter. He had felt this once before, centuries ago, when Margaret would read in his study while he worked. She never said much, just existed in his space, and somehow that made the darkness feel less heavy. Can I ask you something? Clara said, reaching for a higher shelf. Sure. Why maintenance? You seem... She moved her hand vaguely at him. I don't know, too smart for this. Darius almost laughed. Maybe I'm exactly smart enough to know this is all I can handle right now. That's confusing. So is working 2 jobs and still smiling at strangers in a basement. Clara grinned. Good answer. She stretched up for a box of light bulbs on the top shelf, her fingers barely touching it. Darius reached over her, careful not to get too close, and grabbed the box. Thanks. These are for the west hallway. Half the lights up there are... The long light right above them made a sharp pop. Everything happened in less than a second. The light exploded, raining glass and sparks. Darius's instincts kicked in before he could think. He spun, wrapped his arms around Clara, and twisted so his back took the force of the falling debris. Glass shattered against his shoulders. Something hot, the burning wire, scraped his left forearm, tearing through the work clothes sleeve. Then silence. Darius stood frozen. Clara was pressed against his chest, his arms locked around her to keep her safe. He could feel her heart beating fast. 140 beats per minute now, racing with excitement and fear. Are you okay? He asked, his voice rougher than he meant it to be. Yes, I think so. Clara pulled back slightly, looking up at him. Are you okay? That glass. I'm fine, but she was already looking at his arm where the sleeve had ripped. Her eyes grew wide. Darius followed her gaze and cursed quietly. The fabric had torn completely away, showing his forearm, and there, visible even in the dim light, were the scars, silver lines crossing his skin in patterns that looked almost planned. Burn marks, old and faded but clearly seen, the kind of scars that came from something that burned hot enough to mark a supernatural body forever. Sunlight, from the one time he had been careless in 1847 when he had stayed too long reading Margaret's letters after sunrise. Clara stared at the scars for a long moment. Darius prepared for questions he couldn't answer. How did you get those? Why do they look like that? What are you? But Clara just reached out, her fingers floating an inch above the marks without touching. That must have hurt once, she whispered. Not, that must hurt, but past tense. Like she understood these were old injuries, old pain that had long since stopped burning. Darius couldn't breathe. Didn't need to breathe, but forgot how to pretend. Yeah, he managed. Long time ago. Clara's hand dropped. We should probably report that light. Maintenance needs to. She stopped, a small smile crossing her face. Oh, right. You are maintenance. I'll handle it. And your arm? That wire was hot. Really, I'm fine. Darius stepped back, putting space between them before his control slipped more. The way she had looked at his scars, not with dislike or fear, but with kindness, made him want to tell her everything. I'm not Derek. I'm Darius Vale, the man you covered with your sweater last night. I'm 300 years old. I watched kingdoms rise and fall, and I think you're the reborn soul of the only woman I ever loved. Instead, he said, you should probably get back to work before someone notices we're both missing. Clara nodded but hesitated. Hey, Derek. Thanks. For, the shield thing. Instinct. Good instincts. She gathered her cleaning supplies and headed toward the elevator. leaving Darius alone in the flickering darkness. He looked down at his exposed scars, centuries old, reminders of the one time he had been careless enough to let feeling be more important than survival. Clara had touched them without fear, seen the pain without asking for explanations, just like Margaret, he thought. But Margaret had known what he was. Clara didn't. Which brought up a scary question. Was she remembering? Or was this just who she had always been across lifetimes, across centuries? Someone who saw monsters and chose kindness? Anyway, Darius pulled out his phone and typed a message to his private helper. I need a family history check. Thompson family line going back 200 years. Look for any connection to the name Margaret Whitmore. He hit send and stared at the broken light above him, still sparking in the dark. Something was happening, something that felt like fate, which he had stopped believing in around the same time he had stopped believing in forgiveness. But Clara Thompson made him want to believe again. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The family history report arrived at 3:47 a.m. Darius sat in the Vale Corp archives, a temperature-controlled room 3 floors below ground, where the company kept records going back to its start in 1891. He had started the business under a different name then, using money he had gained over centuries to build something real in the new world. His private helper, a former spy who was great at impossible requests and didn't ask questions, had sent a 47-page document. Darius opened it. Subject: Clara Marie Thompson. Mother: Patterson. Grandmother: Elizabeth Patterson, née Whitmore. Great-grandmother: Dorothy Whitmore, née Shin. Great-great-grandmother: Alice Whitmore, née Dover. Darius scrolled faster, his hands steady even as his mind raced. Great-great-great-grandmother: Catherine Whitmore, née Ashford. Great-great-great-great-grandmother: Margaret Rose Whitmore, born 1802, Yorkshire, England. Married Darius Vale, 1823, died 1825. There it was in black and white digital writing that proved what his dead heart had already known. Clara wasn't just like Margaret. She was Margaret's blood relative. A direct line passed down through daughters for 200 years. Darius leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. The report continued. Note: Whitmore family records become few after 1892. A fire destroyed the family estate in Sussex. Census records show only one survivor, Catherine Whitmore, age 19, who moved to America. She arrived at Ellis Island in 1893 using the name Catherine Ashford, possibly to run away from debt or a scandal. Trail goes cold for several years before she shows up again in Boston, 1899, married with a daughter. A fire. Of course, there was a fire. Darius pulled up his own private records, journals he had kept, written in codes only he could read. He found the entry from October 1892. The Whitmore estate burned last night. I watched from the hills. Margaret's family, her brother's line, gone. I should have protected them. I promised her I would watch over them. But I was in Vienna dealing with business that mattered so much less. Another failure. Another promise broken. He had gone to the funeral in a disguise, making the local priest let him see the bodies. 7 dead, but he had counted carefully. One coffin held only ashes and bone pieces put together to look like a body that had never been there. Someone had escaped. Catherine, Margaret's great-great-niece. She had survived and disappeared, changing her identity, starting over in America with nothing. And now, 133 years later, her descendant cleaned office buildings at midnight and gave away sweaters she couldn't afford to replace. Why? Darius thought. Why does the universe bring her back to me now? He had no answer. Only the sure feeling that this wasn't chance. The world didn't work that way. Not for creatures like him who cheated death for centuries. His phone buzzed, a text from his building security. For your information, suspicious activity reported in the living area near 47th and 9th. Police increasing patrols. Darius checked the address against Clara's file. her building was in 48th and 9th. Clara felt the eyes on her the moment she stepped out of the subway. It was barely 4 p.m. She had finished her restaurant shift early because they had had no customers, and the October sun was already setting behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. "You're just imagining things," she told herself, holding her purse tighter. "Nobody's following you." But the feeling stayed, that crawling feeling on her back, like invisible fingers tracing her spine. She had felt it yesterday, too, when she had been walking Ethan home from school, and the day before at the laundry place. Always the same, a presence just out of sight, watching without showing itself. Clara walked faster. Her building was 2 blocks away, a 6-story walk-up with paint peeling like old skin. Not home, just the place she slept between shifts. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, her keys already in hand. Ethan would be with Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who watched him after school for $20 a week. Clara could barely afford it. Ethan burst out of apartment 3B the moment Clara knocked. He was small for 5 with dark curly hair and eyes that saw too much. "Look what I found." He held up something small and silver-pinched between his thumb and finger. "Where did you get that, baby?" "By our door. It was just sitting there like someone dropped it." Ethan turned it over in his palm. "It's a bat. A fancy bat." Clara took it from him and her breath caught. It wasn't just a bat. It was a symbol. A shaped bat with spread wings, made from real silver with tiny red gems for eyes. The details were amazing, clearly old, the kind of thing that belonged in a museum, not on the floor of a Bronx apartment building. "Ethan, you can't keep this. Someone lost something expensive." "But who? Nobody here has stuff like this." He was right. Their building was full of families like theirs, working poor, holding on by luck and prayer. No one owned silver symbols with ruby eyes. Mrs. Chen appeared in her doorway, wiping flour from her hands. "Everything okay? Did you see anyone unusual in the hallway today?" The old woman frowned. "No, but..." She hesitated. "This morning, very early, I heard footsteps. Slow, like someone was walking very carefully. I looked through the peephole, but the hallway was empty." A shiver ran down Clara's back. "Mama, what's wrong?" Ethan tugged her sleeve. "Nothing, sweetheart. Go pack your backpack. We need to return this tomorrow." Clara handed Mrs. Chen a $20 bill. "Thank you for watching him." Inside their apartment, Clara locked the door, all 3 locks, including the chain, and went to the window. She looked down at the street below, searching for anything out of place. At first, she saw nothing. Just the usual mess, people heading home from work, a dog walker, a delivery truck. Then she saw him, a man in a long dark coat, standing perfectly still beneath the store awning across the street. He was looking up, looking directly at her window. Clara quickly moved back, her heart racing. When she dared to peek again 5 seconds later, he was gone. "Mama?" Ethan appeared beside her, holding his stuffed elephant. "Are you scared?" "Yes," she wanted to say. "I'm terrified and I don't know why." Instead, she knelt down and hugged him tight. "No, baby, just tired." "You're always tired," Ethan said, like it was a fact. Then he pulled back and looked at her with his very grown-up eyes. "I had a weird dream last night." "Yeah?" "About a man with red eyes," he said. Ethan wrinkled his face, trying to remember. "He said, 'Protect her.' I think he meant you." Clara's blood went cold. What did this man look like? Fancy, like the people on TV, and sad. Really, really sad. Ethan yawned. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" "Sure, baby." But Clara's hands shook as she filled the pot with water. Ethan's dream. The silver bat symbol. The feeling of being watched. The man in the street. And something else. Something she couldn't quite name. A sense of knowing. like she had forgotten something important, and her mind was screaming at her to remember. She looked at the bat symbol sitting on the counter, its red eyes catching the light. "Who are you?" she wondered. "And why do I feel like I should know?" In the living room, Ethan hummed while playing with his toy cars. The melody was strange, old-fashioned, like something from a different time. Clara had never heard it before. So why did it make her want to cry? 3 blocks away, Darius stood on a rooftop, his coat blowing in the wind. He'd dropped the symbol on purpose, a test, to see if she would keep it or try to return it. But watching her window, seeing the fear in her outline, he realized he had made a mistake. Clara didn't need more fear in her life. She needed safety, protection, things he had failed to give Margaret before she died. "I won't fail again," he promised silently. But even as he made the promise, he wondered, was he protecting her, or was he haunting her like the ghost he had become, neither truly dead nor truly alive? The line between the two was thinner than most people knew. The invitation arrived at Clara's apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, slipped under her door in a light-colored envelope that felt like silk. Valecorp Staff Appreciation Dinner, Saturday, October 19th, 8:00 p.m. Personal invitation for Clara Thompson. Transportation provided. Clara stared at it, confused. She had worked at Valecorp for 8 months and had never been invited to anything. The day shift got company picnics and holiday parties, but the night crew was invisible. The people who cleaned up after the real employees went home. "Is it fancy?" Ethan asked, looking over her shoulder. "I don't know." There was a phone number at the bottom. Clara called it, expecting the HR department. Instead, a smooth male voice answered. "Miss Thompson, I'm glad you received the invitation. Mr. Vale." Clara's stomach flipped. She had never actually talked to the CEO. She had only seen him once, asleep in his office, looking so tired. She had wanted to protect him somehow. "I wanted to personally thank the night staff for their hard work. You work while the rest of us sleep, and that deserves recognition." "That's very kind, but I don't have anyone to watch my son." "Bring him. There's a game room." "He'll be well cared for." Clara hesitated. Something felt wrong about this, but she couldn't figure out what. "Will others be there?" "From the night crew?" "Of course. I've invited everyone." After she hung up, Clara looked at the invitation again. The address was in Westchester, an hour's drive. She would need to borrow a dress from somewhere, and heels. Goodness, she hadn't worn heels in years. "Mama, are you smiling?" Ethan asked. She was. Despite the weirdness, despite the trouble, some part of her was excited. When was the last time someone had invited her to anything that wasn't a school meeting or a bill collector's office? "This is silly," she told herself. "It's just a work dinner." But she borrowed a black dress from Mrs. Chen. Anyway, the car that picked them up on Saturday was a Mercedes. The driver, a quiet man in a neat suit, held the door open like Clara was royalty instead of a janitor who made $14 an hour. Ethan pressed his face against the window the entire drive, watching the city turn into suburbs, then to huge houses hidden behind iron fences. "Mama, rich people live differently," he whispered. "Yeah, baby, they do." The Vale mansion appeared at the end of a tree-lined driveway, a stone building that looked like it had been moved from Europe. Gothic windows, ivy climbing the walls, a fountain in the round driveway that probably cost more than Clara's yearly salary. "Holy crap," Clara breathed, then covered her mouth. "I didn't say that," Ethan giggled. A butler, a real butler, met them at the door. "Miss Thompson, young Master Ethan, please follow me." The inside was exactly what Clara expected. Marble floors, crystal lights, oil paintings that belonged in museums. But it was also strangely cold. Not the temperature. The heating worked fine, but there was an empty feeling to it, like a beautiful place where Noon actually lived. "The other guests?" Clara asked. The butler's face didn't change. "You're the first to arrive. Mr. Vale is waiting in the dining room." Something twisted in Clara's stomach. Her natural feeling screamed that this was wrong. But Ethan was already following the butler, and turning around now would be rude, and she needed this job, and the dining room took her breath away. It was lit entirely by candles, hundreds of them, on the table, in wall holders, reflecting off mirrors and crystal. The table was set for two, just two, and at the head of the table sat Darius Vale. He stood when he saw her, and Clara's words died in her throat. He was wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her car back when she had had a car. His pale eyes caught the candlelight, making them almost shine. "Miss Thompson, thank you for coming. Where is everyone else?" A pause. Then, "I may have been dishonest. This dinner is specifically for you." Clara's heart began to race. "Why?" "Because you covered me with your sweater when you thought I was sleeping. Because you clean my office with more care than most people show their own homes. Because," Darius pointed to a chair. "Please sit. Let me at least explain over dinner." The butler had already quickly taken Ethan away, promising video games and pizza. Clara was alone with her billionaire boss in a huge mansion, and every survival instinct told her to run. But she sat down because part of her, the part that had whispered to a sleeping stranger, the part that had covered him when she had nothing to give, that part was curious. Dinner was served. Courses Clara couldn't pronounce, wine she pretended to sip, conversation that felt like a dance where neither of them knew the steps. "You asked why I invited you," Darius said, cutting into something that might have been deer meat. "The truth is, I wanted to understand you. Understand me? I'm kind in a world that punishes kindness. You give when you have nothing. He stopped, something flashing across his face. "You remind me of someone I lost." Clara set down her fork. "Mr. Vale. Darius? Please, Darius." The name felt strange on her tongue, familiar somehow. "I'm just a janitor who tries to be decent. There's nothing to understand." "That's where you're wrong." Before Clara could answer, the lights died. Every light in the mansion went out at the same time, leaving only the candles. Their flames danced wildly as if reacting to something outside. "Power grid," Darius said. But his voice had changed, rougher. "Storm must have..." Then Clara saw the window. The moon was rising, huge, blood red, like something from a bad dream. It filled the window frame, bathing everything in red light. Darius stood up quickly, his chair scraping back. "You need to leave now." "What? Why?" "Please." The word came out choked. "Clara, I need you to go." But Clara was frozen, staring at him because in the blood moonlight she could see his face changing. His eyes were no longer pale gray. They were burning red. His skin had gone corpse white, and when he opened his mouth to speak, she saw them. Fangs. Long, sharp, impossible fangs where his regular teeth should be. Clara should have screamed, should have run, should have done anything except what she did. She stood slowly, her legs shaking, and whispered, "You look just like him." Darius froze. "What?" "The man in my dreams. The one I keep seeing." Clara's voice trembled. "The one with red eyes who keeps saying... She pressed her hands to her temples. "God, why can't I remember?" "Clara, I know you." The words burst from her like a confession. "I don't know how I know you, but I do. When I covered you with my sweater, it felt like I'd done it before, like I was supposed to." Tears streamed down her face. "What's happening to me? What are you?" Darius took a step toward her, his hands raised. He had pulled back the fangs, hidden them through pure will, but his eyes still burned red. "I'm the monster who loved someone like you once," he said quietly. "And I've spent 200 years trying to forget her." "Margaret," Clara whispered. Darius's face went blank with shock. "How do you know that name?" "I don't know. I just..." Clara backed toward the door, her mind breaking apart. "I need to get my son. I need to leave. I need..." "Clara, wait." But she was already running, her borrowed heels clicking against the marble, the blood moon following her through every window like a judgment. Behind her, Darius stood alone in the candlelight, watching his past run away from him again. Clara didn't remember the car ride home. One moment, she was grabbing Ethan from the game room. The next, she was locking her apartment door with shaking hands, checking the locks twice, then 3 times. "Mama, you're scaring me." Ethan stood in his pajamas, clutching his elephant. "What happened?" "Nothing, baby, I don't feel well." Clara knelt and pulled him into a hug, breathing in the simple comfort of his shampoo, the cheap kind that smelled like fake strawberries. "Real normal, let's get you to bed." "Okay." But after Ethan fell asleep, Clara sat on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing. Red eyes, fangs. "I'm the monster who loved someone like you once. It should have been impossible. Vampires weren't real. They were stories, make-believe, The kind of thing Ethan watched in cartoons where the monsters were friendly and drank juice boxes instead of blood. Except she had seen his face change. Seen the hunger and the pain and the knowing in those burning eyes. "Margaret," she had said. Where had that name come from? Clara pulled out her phone and typed the name into Google, her fingers shaking. Margaret Whitmore. The search returned family history. Old records, a few scattered mentions. She clicked on one. A scanned marriage record from 1823. Margaret Rose Whitmore married Darius Vale. 14th of June, Yorkshire, England. The phone slipped from Clara's hand. She picked it up with numb fingers and kept reading. Margaret Vale, née Whitmore, died moits en 25. Cause of death, fever. Survived by husband Darius Vale, whereabouts unknown. 2 years. They had been married for 2 years before she died, and somehow Clara had known her name. This is crazy. This is impossible. But she kept searching, going deep into records and old files until tiredness finally dragged her under at 4:10 a.m. The dream came in pieces, parts of a life that wasn't theirs, but felt more real than memory. She was in a study lit by oil lamps and a fireplace that crackled with dying flames. Her hands, not her hands but they moved when she wanted, were stained with ink, holding a feather pen over paper. "You should rest." The voice came from behind her, smooth and familiar. She turned and saw him, Darius, but different. His hair longer, tied back, his clothes from another century, and his eyes. They were the pale gray she had seen in his office before the blood moon turned them red. "So should you," she heard herself say. Her voice was different, too. Formal, British. "You've been working since sunset. I have an empire to maintain. And I have a husband who forgets he's human." She rose from the desk. Goodness. She was wearing a corset, layers of heavy fabric, and crossed to him. Her hands found his face, traced the sharp line of his jaw. "You're cold." "I'm always cold." "Then let me warm you." She pulled him down to her, and when their lips met, she felt something click into place, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. When they pulled apart, Darius rested his forehead against hers. His eyes had changed, burning crimson in the firelight. She didn't move back. "You're not afraid," he whispered, sounding surprised. "Of you, never," she smiled. "You gave me peace when I had none. Why would I fear the man who taught me what love actually means?" "Margaret, hush." She pressed a finger to his lips. "No one deserves to be this tired. Come, sleep beside me just for a few hours." "I don't sleep." "Then pretend for me." And he did. He lay beside her in the huge 4-poster bed, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her like she was something precious, like she was worth protecting. Like she was. Clara woke up gasping, tears streaming down her face. The dream stayed with her, refusing to disappear the way dreams usually did. She could still feel the weight of the corset, smell the lamp oil, taste his lips. No, not my memory, not my life. But it had felt real. More real than this small apartment with its water-stained ceiling and neighbors shouting through thin walls. "Mama!" Clara jumped. Ethan stood in her doorway, his face pale. "Baby, what's wrong?" "I had a bad dream." He climbed onto the couch and curled into her lap. Too big for this now. But she held him anyway. The man with the red eyes was there again. Clara's blood went cold. What did he say? He was sad. Really, really sad. And he kept saying, "Protect her. She doesn't remember yet, but she will." Ethan looked up at her with scared eyes. "Mama who doesn't remember." "Remember what?" Before Clara could answer, someone knocked on the door. 3 soft knocks, careful and purposeful. Clara's heart stopped. It was 6:47 a.m. No one knocked this early unless something was wrong. She settled Ethan on the couch. "Stay here." "Mama, don't." But she was already at the door, looking through the peephole. Darius Vale stood in her hallway, still wearing his suit from last night, looking like he had been to a terrible place, and decided to visit her on the way back. Clara opened the door, but kept the chain locked. "How did you find me?" "I've always known where you were." His voice was empty. "Clara, we need to talk. About the fact that you're a vampire, or about the fact that I'm apparently the reborn soul of your dead wife?" A pause. "Both," Clara laughed. A sharp, broken sound. "I dreamed about her, about being her, about you." She pressed her hand against the doorframe to steady herself. I remembered things I shouldn't know. Your study, the way you drank your tea, the scar on your shoulder from... She stopped. From a sword fight in 1809. How do I know that? Because you were there. Darius's eyes, gray again, human again, filled with something that looked like hope and devastation mixed together. Because somehow, unbelievably, you're her, and I don't understand why the universe gave you back to me when I don't deserve it. I have a son. Clara's voice shook. I have a life. I'm not her, I'm me. I know. Then why are you here? Because you're in danger. Darius glanced down the hallway. There are people, hunters, who track my kind. They found my trail through this building, through you. Last night, when I lost control, I left a psychic sign they can follow. So this is your fault? Yes, at least he was honest. Clara looked back at Ethan, who was watching them with his wise eyes. Then back at Darius, who stood in her hallway like a ghost from a past she shouldn't remember but did. Tell me the truth, she whispered. All of it. Why did Margaret D? Darius's face crumbled. Because I loved her too much to not turn her. She wanted to stay human, stay pure. So I let her grow old while I stayed frozen. And when the fever took her, I held her hand and watched her slip away, knowing I could save her with a single bite. His voice broke. I chose her wishes over my own heart, and I've regretted it every day for 200 years. Clara felt tears on her cheeks. She forgave you. How do you know? Because I remember. Clara touched her chest where the memory sat like a heavy stone. Her last words. She said, You gave me peace when I had none. That was always enough. Darius's eyes grew wide. I never told anyone that. Not in 2 centuries. I know. Clara's hand moved to the chain lock. Because I was there. She opened the door, and for the first time since Margaret's death, Darius stepped across the entrance toward the woman he loved and lost. The woman who had somehow unbelievably come back. They ended up on the Vale Corp rooftop. Clara didn't remember Darius calling his driver or getting Ethan safely to his top-floor apartment with a security guard. But somehow it had happened. Now she stood 45 stories above Manhattan, the wind blowing her hair, the sky changing from black to deep purple as sunrise approached. We have maybe 30 minutes before the sun rises, Darius said, walking on the rooftop like a caged wolf. The hunters, they use sunlight as a weapon. Strong UV bombs, bright flares. They'll come at dawn when I'm weakest. Then why are we here? Clara hugged herself against the cold. Why not hide somewhere dark? Because I needed you to see. Darius stopped at the edge, pointing to the city spreading below them like a blanket of lights. I built this, all of it, Vale Corp, the hospitals it pays for, the schools, the shelters. For 200 years, I've tried to make the world better because I couldn't save the one person who mattered. Margaret. You. He turned to face her. You were always you, Clara. Margaret was just another version, another life. But the soul inside, the kindness, the strength, the way you see good in broken things, that's always been the same. Clara's throat tightened. I don't know how to be what you need. I don't need you to be anything except safe. Darius pulled an envelope from his jacket. There's a house in Oregon paid off under your name. $50,000 in an account for Ethan's school money, papers for new identities. You leave tonight, and the hunters will lose your trail. What about you? I'll lead them away. Make them think you were just a casual victim by letting them kill you. Darius smiled. But it was sad. I've been tired for a very long time. Clara, maybe it's time to rest. No. The word came out sharply. You don't get to do that. I'm offering you freedom. You're offering me guilt. Clara's voice got louder. You think I want to spend the rest of my life knowing you died so I could run? Knowing that some part of me, Margaret or whoever I was, loved you enough to find you again across centuries, and I just left. You have a son who dreams about you, who somehow knows you're important. Clara stepped closer, her hands balled into fists. I don't understand this, any of this, but I know what it feels like when you're near me. Like I can finally breathe after holding my breath my entire life. Like I've been searching for something I lost and didn't know I was looking for. Darius stared at her. Clara, Margaret told you I forgave you. Well, I'm telling you now, I'm tired of running. Clara's voice cracked. My whole life I've run from sadness, from poverty, from every hard thing that came my way. But I'm done. If hunters are coming, then we face them together. Or not at all. You could die. Everyone dies, Darius. But not everyone gets a second chance to fight for something that matters. Before Darius could answer, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. They're here, in the building. They must have tracked your scent from my mansion. How many? 4 signs? A professional team? He moved to the rooftop access door and locked it with a heavy lock. That'll buy us 5 minutes. What do we do? You hide behind the air conditioning unit. When they break in, they draw them away, and you run for the emergency stairs on the north side. An explosion shook the building. The rooftop access door blew inward, metal screeching as it tore from its hinges. Smoke poured through the opening and figures emerged. 4 people in military gear. Faces hidden behind masks, carrying weapons that glowed with an eerie blue light. Darius Vale. The lead hunter's voice was changed by a voice device. By order of the Covenant, you're sentenced to final death for crimes against humanity. You exist. That's crime enough. The hunter raised a round device. Clara recognized it from action movies. A grenade. Say goodbye to your pet human. Everything happened at once. Darius moved faster than Clara's eyes could follow, putting himself between her and the hunters. The grenade exploded in the air, and instead of fire or pieces, it released a blinding white light, pure, strong sunlight. Darius screamed. The light covered him, and Clara watched in horror as his skin began to smoke, silver burns spreading across his hands and face. He fell to his knees, still trying to shield her with his body. No. Clara didn't think. She tore off her sweater, the same worn light brown one she had worn that first night, and threw it over Darius's head and shoulders, trying to block the UV light. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough, but she knelt beside him anyway, covering him with her body, whispering, the only words that mattered. No one deserves to be this tired. Stay with me, please. Darius's hand found hers, his grip weak. When he looked up at her, his eyes were leaking, not tears but blood. Red tracks ran down his cheeks, glowing slightly in the pre-dawn light. Blood tears, the rarest vampire sign, triggered only by true soul recognition. It's really you, he breathed. My queen, my Margaret, my Clara. The hunters had stopped moving forward, staring at the blood tears. Impossible, one whispered. Blood tears mean true love, another finished. The kind that goes beyond death. The lead hunter slowly lowered her weapon. We hunt monsters, not... She pointed weakly at Clara and Darius, huddled together on the rooftop. Not this. Please, Clara begged, still covering Darius. He's not a monster. He's just tired. He's been tired for so long. The eastern sky was turning gold. Sunrise was minutes away. The lead hunter made a choice. She pulled a black cloth from her belt and tossed it to Clara. UV blocking fabric. Get him inside. If we report this, others will come, so we won't report it. She looked at her team. Agreed. They nodded. You have 1 minute before the sun clears the buildings. I suggest you move. Clara didn't waste time saying thank you. She wrapped the UV fabric around Darius and helped him stand, his weight heavy against her. Together they stumbled toward the stairs, as the first rays of sunlight kissed the rooftop behind them. In the stairwell, safe in the darkness, Darius fell against the wall. The blood tears had dried on his face, leaving faint marks like war paint. You stayed, he whispered. Of course I stayed, you idiot! Clara was crying now, shaking with excitement and relief. What part of we face this together did you not understand? The part where you risk your life for a monster? You're not a monster. You're just a man who's been alone too long. Clara gently held his burned face. But you're not alone anymore. Understand? Darius pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. His body shook, not from pain, but from the weight of 2 centuries of loneliness finally lifting. I understand, he breathed, and for the first time since Margaret's death, he let himself hope that rest, real rest, might finally be possible. The cafe smelled like coffee and cinnamon rolls. Clara wiped down the counter for the 3rd time, even though it was already very clean. A nervous habit. She had opened Sunrise Cafe a week ago in a small town on the coast 3 hours north of the city. A place where nobody knew her name and nobody asked questions about the sudden job change or the mystery person who had paid for everything. Through the window, she could see Ethan on the beach collecting shells with the kind of pure happiness she had thought he had lost forever. Here, there were no gunshots at night, no broken locks, no fear, just the endless rhythm of waves and the cry of seagulls. The bell above the door chimed. Clara looked up with her practiced smile. "Welcome to sunrise." The words died in her throat. Darius Vale stood in the doorway, backlit by the setting sun. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater, so different from his fancy suits that it took her a moment to recognize him. His face had healed completely, no trace of the silver burns that had marked him on that rooftop. But something else had changed. His eyes were warm, almost human. "Is it too late for coffee?" His voice was soft, unsure, like he was afraid she might tell him to leave. Clara's hands shook. She had thought about this moment every day for a week. Wondered if he would come, hoped he would, feared he wouldn't. "We're open until 9, she managed. Darius approached the counter slowly, as if crossing a great distance rather than just a few feet. "Black coffee, please." Clara poured it with hands that wouldn't stay steady. When she set the cup down, their fingers brushed, skin to skin, warm to warm. "You're not cold anymore," she whispered. "No." Darius wrapped both hands around the mug, staring into it like it held answers. "I'm not a lot of things anymore." "What do you mean?" He looked up and his eyes, those pale gray eyes she had first seen in his office, were filled with wonder. "I haven't fed in a week. The hunger, it's gone. Completely gone." He took a sip of coffee and smiled. "This is the first thing I've tasted in 300 years that didn't taste like ashes." Clara's breath caught. "How?" Darius set down the cup. "Your blood tears on the rooftop. They weren't just tears. They were proof of soul recognition. When you covered me. When you stayed, even though you could have run." He shook his head. "Something in me broke or healed. I'm not sure which, but the curse lifted. I woke up the next evening and realized I could walk in sunlight." "You can?" "Not full daylight yet, but dusk, dawn. I watched the sunset tonight for the first time since 1723. And his voice cracked. "It was beautiful." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Darius, I tracked your scent here. I hope that's not creepy." He smiled. A real smile, innocent and unsure. I needed to see you, to make sure you were safe and happy." He glanced out the window at Ethan. "He looks good." Lighter. "We badar." Clara came around the counter, unable to stay away anymore. "But we've been missing something." "What?" "You." Darius stood slowly, his coffee forgotten. "Clara, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering." She stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth coming from him. Real warmth. Human warmth. "Ethan asks about you every day. He says the man in his dreams is lonely. And she touched his face, traced the line of his jaw the way Margaret had in her dream memory. I remember more. Every night pieces come back. Our life together. The way you'd read to me in your study. How you'd pretend to sleep beside me even though you didn't need to. Just so I wouldn't feel alone. Margaret loved those moments. I love those moments." Clara's voice was firm. "I'm not just Margaret, and I'm not just Clara. I'm both. I'm all the versions of this soul that kept finding its way back to you. And I'm tired of fighting it. You deserve a normal life. I deserve a life with someone who sees me, who saw me across centuries, who loves me enough to let me go and chase me enough to hope I'll stay." She smiled through her tears. "You think that's normal?" Darius pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers the way he had in that centuries-old dream. "I don't know how to be human anymore." "Then learn. We'll figure out together." Clara's hands found his. "But first, you need to do something you haven't done in 300 years. "What's that?" "Rest." She led him to the corner booth by the window, the one with a view of the beach and the endless ocean beyond. Darius slid into the seat, and Clara sat across from him, her hands wrapped around his across the worn table. "This time," Darius said softly, "I just wanted to see you awake." Clara smiled, the kind of smile that held lifetimes of love and loss and finding each other again. "Then stay a while. You've been tired long enough." Through the window, the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and red. Ethan looked up from his shell collection and waved. Clara waved back. And Darius, the vampire king who had ruled in shadow for 3 centuries, who had built empires and watched them fall, who had loved and lost, and somehow been given the rarest gift of all, finally closed his eyes. Not in death, not in pretending, but in peace. Real, honest human peace. Outside, the waves kept their endless rhythm. Inside, the coffee stayed warm, and for the first time in 300 years, Darius Vale truly rested because he wasn't alone anymore, and he never would be again.